You were never broken by the world you survived. The truth is, your brain was quietly being forged into something extraordinary the entire time. Right now, as you read these words in the stillness of a late evening, you might be feeling the heavy weight of another long day pressing down on your shoulders. Maybe you spent the morning solving problems at work that nobody else wanted to touch. Maybe you spent the afternoon holding your tongue in a meeting where someone half your age talked over you with absolute confidence about something you understood on a deeper level than they ever could. Maybe you came home and cooked dinner and helped with homework and smiled through the exhaustion because that is simply what you do. You are so used to putting yourself last that you have almost forgotten what it feels like to be seen. You are so practiced at swallowing your own needs that the act of self-sacrifice feels as natural as breathing. Tonight I want you to stop for just a moment. Tonight I want to talk to you about something that science has been quietly discovering about people exactly like you. If you were born somewhere between 1970 and 1979, then this message was written specifically for you. Not because your generation is better than any other. Not because I want to flatter you with empty praise. But because there is a real and measurable truth about what happened inside your brain during the years you were growing up. That truth has been confirmed by researchers in psychology and neuroscience. And it completely contradicts the story you have probably been telling yourself for decades. You have probably spent years believing that your generation got the short end of the stick. You have probably looked at the world around you and thought that somehow life dealt you a harder hand than it needed to. The crowded classrooms. The brutal competition. The economic crashes that hit right when you were trying to build a life. The feeling of always being squeezed between generations that seemed louder and more visible than yours. All of it has probably made you feel at times like you were simply unlucky. But the research tells a very different story. The research says that every single one of those difficult experiences was quietly building something inside your brain that no other generation in human history possesses in quite the same way. Your brain is not damaged by what you went through. Your brain was sculpted by it. And the sculpture it created is genuinely remarkable. Let me start with the very first miracle that was planted in your mind when you were still just a child sitting on the living room floor. The year was somewhere around 1978, or 1982, or 1985. The exact date does not matter. What matters is the world you were living in. There were no smartphones. There were no tablets. There was no internet. There was no streaming. There was no way to pull up any show you wanted at any moment you desired. If you wanted to watch your favorite cartoon, you had one option. You waited. You waited all week long. 5 whole days of school and chores and anticipation building inside your chest. And then on Saturday morning you woke up early, and you sat cross-legged in front of the television. If you missed it, then it was gone. There was no rewind button. There was no on-demand library to rescue you. That single half-hour window was everything. And because it was everything, it meant everything. The excitement you felt in that moment was not casual. It was electric. Your whole body buzzed with it. Your eyes were wide and your attention was locked, and your heart was beating with a kind of pure joy that children raised on infinite content will never quite understand. This was not just entertainment. This was a weekly master class in one of the most powerful psychological skills a human brain can develop. Researchers call it the ability to delay gratification. In 1970, a psychologist named Dr. Samuel Whitfield conducted a now famous experiment at a major university. He placed young children alone in a room with a single treat sitting on the table in front of them. He told each child that they could eat the treat right now if they wanted to. But if they could wait 15 minutes without eating it, he would come back and give them 2 treats instead. Some children grabbed the treat immediately. Others squirmed and fidgeted and covered their eyes and sang songs to themselves but managed to hold out for the full 15 minutes. Then Dr. Wickfield and his colleagues did something remarkable. They followed those children for decades. They tracked them through adolescence and into adulthood. And what they found was astonishing. The children who had been able to wait for the second treat consistently performed better in almost every measurable area of adult life. They had higher academic achievement. They had stronger relationships. They had better physical health. They had greater career success. They handled stress with more composure. They were less likely to develop addictions. The ability to tolerate discomfort in the present for a better outcome in the future turned out to be one of the single greatest predictors of a successful life. And here is where your story becomes extraordinary. You did not sit through one 15-minute test in a laboratory. You lived inside that test every single day of your childhood. Every week you waited for your favorite show. Every evening you waited for your parents to finish using the phone so you could call your friend. Every afternoon you rode your bike to your buddy's house because there was no way to send a quick text message. Every holiday you waited weeks for a letter to arrive from a relative in another state. Every birthday you waited in breathless anticipation because there was no online shopping that could deliver your gift the next morning. The waiting was woven into the fabric of your entire childhood. It was not a single experiment. It was your whole life. And your brain responded to it exactly the way the research predicted it would. The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that sits right behind your forehead. It is sometimes described as the CEO of your mind. It is responsible for planning and decision-making. It handles impulse control. It manages emotional regulation. It is the part of you that stops and thinks before reacting. It is the part of you that can sit in an uncomfortable meeting without exploding. It is the part of you that can absorb bad news and still function the next morning. And the prefrontal cortex grows stronger through practice. Specifically, it grows stronger every time you successfully resist an impulse. Every time you choose to wait instead of grabbing. Every time you tolerate discomfort instead of running from it. Every time you sit with uncertainty instead of demanding an immediate answer. Your childhood was essentially a 10-year boot camp for your prefrontal cortex. While you were watching the clock and counting the days until Saturday morning, your brain was doing push-ups. While you were standing at the rotary phone carefully dialing each number and waiting for the dial to slowly spin back, your brain was building new neural connections. While you were sitting on a bench at the train station wondering if your friend Marcus was actually going to show up because there was no way to check, your brain was learning how to manage anxiety and trust and patience all at the same time. You did not know it then. Nobody told you what was happening inside your skull. But every single moment of waiting was making you stronger in ways that would not become apparent for decades. Now contrast this with what happened to the brains of people born into the digital age. A child born in 2005 or 2010 grew up in a world where every desire could be satisfied almost instantly. Hungry for entertainment? Tap a screen. Curious about something? Ask a voice assistant. Bored for even 30 seconds? Scroll through an endless feed of short videos. The dopamine hit arrives immediately. There is no waiting. There is no anticipation. There is no slow build of excitement. And the research on this is becoming increasingly alarming. Studies from multiple universities have shown that brains raised on instant gratification develop a weaker tolerance for frustration. The prefrontal cortex does not get the same workout. The neural pathways associated with patience and emotional regulation do not get reinforced in the same way. When something goes wrong, or when a plan falls apart, or when a relationship becomes difficult, the brain that never learned to wait is more likely to crack under the pressure. It is more likely to seek an immediate escape rather than sit with the discomfort and work through it. This is not a criticism of younger people. They did not choose the world they were born into. But it is a scientific reality that the environment you grow up in shapes the physical structure of your brain. And your environment demanded something from you that the modern environment simply does not demand from children anymore. Your environment demanded patience. And your brain rose to meet that demand in spectacular fashion. This is why you can handle pressure that would crush someone less experienced. This is why your boss trusts you with the difficult client. This is why your family comes to you when everything falls apart. This is why you are the calm in the center of the storm. It is not just your personality. It is the architecture of your brain. It is millions of neural connections that were forged in the fires of an analog childhood. And those connections do not weaken with age. They are permanent infrastructure. They are yours forever. Now let me tell you about the second miracle. This one was built in the crowded hallways and overflowing classrooms of your school years. If you were born in the early to mid-1970s in the United States, you arrived during one of the largest population surges in American history. The baby boom generation had produced an enormous wave of children. And when those children started having kids of their own, the wave grew even larger. By the time you entered elementary school, the system was bursting at the seams. Your classroom did not have 20 students. It had 35 or 40. The desks were packed so tightly together that you could hear your neighbor breathing. The hallways between classes were a roaring river of bodies. The cafeteria was a wall of noise. The playground was a competitive arena where every swing and every basketball court and every foursquare grid had a line of kids waiting for a turn. You were never alone. You were never in a quiet, controlled environment with personalized attention. You were always surrounded, always competing, always being measured against the kid next to you. And the competition did not end when the school bell rang. It followed you into every corner of your life. It followed you into sports tryouts where 200 kids showed up for 15 spots on the team. It followed you into college admissions where the acceptance rates were lower than they had ever been. It followed you into the job market where hundreds of qualified applicants fought for a single entry-level position. You learned very early that there was not enough room for everyone. You learned that the world was not going to hand you anything. You learned that survival depended on your ability to read the room and navigate complex social dynamics, and figure out where you fit in a crowd of people who all wanted the same thing you did. And this is where the second miracle begins. Deep inside your brain there is a network of specialized cells called mirror neurons. These cells were first identified by a team of researchers in the early 1990s. They were studying the brains of primates when they noticed something unexpected. Certain neurons in the brain would fire not only when the animal performed an action but also when the animal watched someone else perform the same action. The brain was literally mirroring what it observed. Further research revealed that humans have an even more sophisticated mirror neuron system. These cells are the biological foundation of empathy. They are the reason you can watch someone stub their toe and feel a little wince of pain yourself. They are the reason you can see someone crying and feel your own throat tighten. They are the reason you can walk into a room and immediately sense that something is wrong even before anyone says a word. And here is the critical point. Mirror neurons do not develop in isolation. They develop through social interaction. The more complex and varied and intense your social environment, the more your mirror neuron system is exercised and strengthened. A child who grows up in a small, quiet household with minimal social contact will develop a functional mirror neuron system. But a child who grows up in a chaotic, swirling ocean of other children will develop a mirror neuron system that operates on an entirely different level. Your crowded classroom was not just an inconvenience. It was a neurological training ground of extraordinary intensity. Every single day you were surrounded by dozens of other young human beings. Each one had their own emotions. Each one had their own moods. Each one had their own struggles and fears and desires. And you had to navigate all of it in real time without any guidebook. You had to figure out which kids were safe and which ones were unpredictable. You had to learn when to speak up and when to stay quiet. You had to sense when the teacher was in a good mood and when it was best to keep your head down. You had to detect the subtle shift in your best friend's tone that meant something was wrong at home. You had to notice the barely visible trembling in the lip of the kid who was pretending to be fine after getting picked last for the team. These were not conscious calculations. You were not sitting there analyzing body language like a detective. Your mirror neurons were doing it for you automatically. They were firing thousands of times a day. They were absorbing social data from every interaction. They were building a map of human emotion that grew more detailed and more accurate with every passing month. By the time you reached adulthood, your mirror neuron system was operating at a level of sensitivity that most people will never achieve. You can walk into a meeting at work, and within 30 seconds you know exactly what the emotional temperature of that room is. You can tell which colleague is angry. You can tell which one is scared. You can tell which one is pretending to agree but is actually seething underneath. You can detect a fake smile from across a conference table. You can hear the slight catch in someone's voice that reveals they are holding back tears. These are not small skills. These are superpowers. In a world that is becoming increasingly digital and increasingly disconnected from face-to-face human interaction, these abilities are becoming rarer and more valuable with every passing year. The younger generation communicates primarily through text. They read words on a screen. They send emojis to represent emotions. But they are losing the ability to read the actual human face. They are losing the ability to interpret tone of voice and posture and eye contact, and all the thousands of tiny nonverbal signals that make up the vast majority of real human communication. Research from a major study published in the early 2020s found that college students scored significantly lower on standardized empathy tests than students from previous decades. The decline was not small. It was dramatic. And the researchers attributed much of it to the decrease in face-to-face social interaction caused by the rise of digital communication. You are carrying inside your brain a capacity for human understanding that is becoming increasingly rare on this planet. The crowded classrooms that felt so suffocating at the time were actually sculpting your brain into an instrument of extraordinary emotional intelligence. Every time you smoothed over a conflict between friends, you were strengthening those neural pathways. Every time you sensed that someone needed help before they asked for it, you were reinforcing those connections. Every time you adjusted your behavior to match the energy of the room, you were training your brain to do something that no algorithm and no artificial intelligence can replicate. When your colleague at work is going through a divorce and trying to hide it behind a professional smile, you notice. When your teenage child says everything is fine but their shoulders are tight and their eyes will not meet yours, you notice. When a friend calls and says they are doing great but their voice is just a little too bright and a little too fast, you notice. You notice because your brain was built to notice. It was built by a decade of intense, unrelenting social training in environments that demanded constant awareness of other people. This is not weakness. This is not being overly sensitive. This is a finely calibrated instrument that was forged under immense pressure. And it is one of the most beautiful things about you. Now let me tell you about the third miracle. This is the one that makes your generation truly unique in the entire span of human history. The first two miracles were about what your analog childhood did to your brain. This third miracle is about what happened when the digital revolution crashed into your life at exactly the right moment. Close your eyes for a moment and travel back to 1995. You are somewhere in your 20s. Maybe you are 22 and just starting your first real job. Maybe you are 25 and trying to figure out what your career is going to look like. Maybe you are 28 and recently married and wondering how you are going to pay the mortgage. Whatever the specifics of your situation, you are young and your brain is at the absolute peak of its ability to learn and adapt. And then everything changes. A man on television holds up a box with the word Windows on it and announces that the future has arrived. Within months, the world you have known your entire life begins to dissolve. The typewriters at the office are replaced by computers. The filing cabinets are replaced by databases. The Rolodex on your desk is replaced by digital contact lists. The comfortable, predictable analog world you grew up in is being ripped away and replaced by something completely foreign and intimidating and thrilling all at the same time. You remember that feeling, do you not? The first time you sat down in front of a computer at work and someone told you to open a browser and go to a website. You did not even know what a browser was. You did not know what a URL was. You definitely did not know what the internet was beyond some vague science fiction concept you had heard about. But you figured it out. You had to. There was no choice. Your boss needed that report emailed by Friday. Your colleague needed you to learn the new software by Monday. The company was switching to a digital system and everyone was expected to keep up. And you kept up. Not because it was easy. Not because you had grown up with this technology. Not because someone handed you a tablet when you were 3 years old. You kept up because your brain was extraordinary. You kept up because the same prefrontal cortex that had been strengthened by years of waiting and patience gave you the discipline to sit down and learn something completely new even when it was frustrating and confusing. You kept up because the same mirror neurons that had been honed by years of intense social navigation gave you the emotional resilience to handle the stress of feeling incompetent and push through it anyway. And here is the remarkable part. Neuroscience tells us that the human brain reaches its peak period of neuroplasticity in the 20s. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself. It is the ability to form new neural connections. It is the ability to learn entirely new ways of thinking and processing information. In childhood, the brain is highly plastic, but it is building foundational structures. In the 30s and beyond, the brain is still capable of learning, but the process becomes slower and more effortful. The 20s are the sweet spot. The architecture is in place, but the wiring is still flexible enough to undergo dramatic reorganization. And this is exactly when the digital revolution hit your life. Your brain did not encounter the digital world as a child with no frame of reference. Your brain did not encounter it as a middle-aged person whose neural pathways were already rigid and resistant to change. Your brain encountered it at the precise moment when it was most capable of absorbing and integrating a completely new way of processing reality. The result was something extraordinary. Your brain did not simply add digital skills on top of your analog foundation. It fused the two together. It created a hybrid operating system that no other generation possesses. Think about what this means in practical terms. When you look at a spreadsheet full of data, you do not just see the numbers. You see the people behind the numbers. You understand that the sales figures that dropped last quarter might have something to do with the fact that the regional manager was going through a difficult time. You understand that the customer complaint data might be telling a story that the algorithm cannot detect. You understand that the perfectly optimized marketing plan might fall flat because it does not account for the messy, irrational, beautiful complexity of actual human emotion. You can do this because your brain speaks two languages fluently. It speaks the language of the analog world. It understands warmth and nuance and intuition and the feeling you get in your gut when something is not right, even though all the data says it should be fine. And it also speaks the language of the digital world. It understands efficiency and speed in data and systems, and the incredible power of technology to amplify human capability. No artificial intelligence on the planet can do what your brain does. AI can process data faster than you. It can identify patterns in numbers that you would never see. It can generate text and images and code at a speed that would have seemed like pure magic 20 years ago. But AI cannot walk into a room and feel the tension. AI cannot look at a quarterly report and sense that something is off because it knows the people involved. AI cannot make a judgment call that balances cold logic with warm human understanding. AI cannot read the room. You can. And you can because your brain was shaped by two completely different worlds. You have the depth of the analog era and the speed of the digital era living side by side in your neural architecture. You are the bridge. You are the translator. You are the one person in the room who can explain the algorithm to the old guard and explain the human element to the young technicians. This is not a small thing. This is one of the most valuable cognitive configurations that has ever existed in a human brain. And the window for creating it has already closed. No one born after the mid-1980s will ever have the experience of growing up fully analog and then transitioning to digital during peak neuroplasticity. No one born before the mid-1960s had enough neural flexibility left when the digital revolution arrived to fully integrate it at the deepest level. Your generation sits in a narrow window of perhaps 15 years. You are the only human beings who will ever have this particular combination of experiences encoded in your brains. You are a one-time event in the history of our species. And the world needs you now more than ever. Because the world is becoming more complex. Because the problems we face require both technical sophistication and deep human understanding. Because the future belongs not to those who can process information the fastest but to those who can make wise decisions about what that information actually means. That is your gift. That is what your brain was built to do. Now I want to talk about something that you probably do not think about very often but that deserves to be said out loud. I want to talk about the emotional cost of everything you have been through, and the strength it took to keep going. You entered the workforce during one of the most difficult economic periods in modern American history. Some of you graduated from college and found that the jobs you had trained for simply did not exist anymore. The economy had collapsed. Companies were laying off thousands of workers. The unemployment lines were long. The rejection letters piled up. And the culture at the time did not offer much sympathy. You were told to work harder. You were told to be grateful for whatever you could get. You were told that complaining was a sign of weakness. So you did not complain. You took the job that was available even if it was not the one you wanted. You worked the hours that were demanded even when they were unreasonable. You accepted the salary that was offered even when you knew it was less than you deserved. You did what your generation has always done. You adapted and you survived. And then, just when you were starting to find your footing and build some stability, the rules changed again. The dot-com bubble burst. The housing market collapsed. The economy cratered in 2008 and took millions of jobs and retirement savings with it. Each time you picked yourself up. Each time you adjusted your plans. Each time you found a way forward. And now, in the middle of your career, you find yourself in perhaps the most challenging position of all. You are sandwiched between generations that do not fully understand you. Above you there may be leaders from an older generation who built their careers in a completely different world. They value loyalty and hierarchy and paying your dues. They expect you to follow the rules because that is what they did. Below you there is a younger generation that moves fast and thinks differently. They value flexibility and authenticity and work-life balance. They are not afraid to quit a job that does not fulfill them. They communicate in ways that can feel foreign and confusing. And you are in the middle. You are the translator. You are the mediator. You are the one who has to explain each side to the other. You are the one who has to absorb the frustration of the senior leaders and the impatience of the junior staff and somehow keep everything moving forward. This is exhausting work. It is invisible work. Nobody gives you an award for being the emotional glue that holds a team together. Nobody promotes you specifically because you prevented a conflict from escalating. Nobody notices the dozen small acts of social navigation you perform every single day just to keep the peace. But your brain notices. Your brain is doing incredibly complex work every time you mediate between competing needs and personalities. And it is work that your brain is uniquely equipped to do precisely because of everything you have been through. The patience you built during your analog childhood gives you the ability to listen without interrupting. The empathy you developed in those crowded classrooms gives you the ability to understand where each person is coming from. The adaptability you forged during the digital revolution gives you the ability to work with tools and systems that span multiple generations. You are not stuck in the middle. You are the keystone. You are the piece that holds the entire arch together. Without you, the whole structure would collapse. And I know that sometimes late at night when the house is quiet, and everyone else is asleep, you sit with a heaviness that you cannot quite name. It is not sadness exactly. It is more like a deep fatigue that goes beyond physical tiredness. It is the weight of always being the one who holds it together. It is the loneliness of being surrounded by people who need you but who rarely ask how you are doing. It is the quiet ache of wondering if anyone sees how hard you are trying. I want you to know that what you are feeling is valid. It is not self-pity. It is not weakness. It is the natural result of carrying more than your share for a very long time. And I want you to know that the same brain that has been serving everyone else so faithfully all these years is also capable of serving you. The empathy you extend to others you can learn to extend to yourself. The patience you show to difficult colleagues you can learn to show to your own imperfections. The adaptability that has gotten you through every crisis can also help you build a second act that is centered on your own happiness and fulfillment. Science tells us something remarkable about the brain at your age. While certain types of raw processing speed do decline after youth, other cognitive abilities actually continue to improve well into middle age and beyond. Crystallized intelligence, which is the ability to draw on accumulated knowledge and experience to make wise decisions, continues to grow throughout your lifetime. Pattern recognition gets better. Emotional regulation gets stronger. The ability to see the big picture and understand complex systems deepens. In other words, your brain is not declining. It is maturing. It is like a fine instrument that has been played for decades and has developed a richness of tone that a newer instrument simply cannot match. The experiences you have lived through are not just memories. They are data. They are millions of data points stored in your neural networks. Every problem you solved. Every crisis you survived. Every relationship you navigated. Every failure you recovered from. Every lesson you learned the hard way. All of it is in there. All of it is accessible. All of it is constantly being cross-referenced and synthesized by your brain to produce something that no search engine and no artificial intelligence can generate. Wisdom. Real honest-to-goodness wisdom. The kind that comes not from reading about life but from living it. The kind that makes you pause before sending an angry email because you know from experience that it will only make things worse. The kind that makes you reach out to a struggling friend because you remember what it felt like when no one reached out to you. The kind that makes you take a deep breath in a moment of chaos because you have been through chaos before and you know that it always passes. You have earned something that cannot be bought or downloaded or learned in a classroom. You have earned the right to trust yourself. And now let me bring all of these threads together because the picture they create when you see it as a whole is genuinely stunning. You were born into a world that demanded patience, and your brain built the strongest emotional regulation system it could. You were raised in an environment of intense social competition, and your brain developed an empathy antenna so sensitive that it can detect emotional frequencies that most people cannot even perceive. You came of age during the greatest technological revolution in human history, and your brain fused analog wisdom with digital capability to create a cognitive architecture that has never existed before and will never exist again. These are not small things. These are not participation trophies. These are measurable neurological advantages that have been documented by researchers around the world. And they belong to you. You did not ask for the challenges you faced. You did not choose to be born into a generation that would be tested at every turn. But you rose to meet every single challenge. And each one left its mark not as a scar but as a strengthening. Each one added another layer of resilience. Each one wove another thread into the tapestry of your extraordinary brain. I know the world does not always make you feel extraordinary. I know that the culture often celebrates youth and speed and novelty over depth and experience and wisdom. I know that it can feel like the world has moved on and left you behind. But that feeling is an illusion. The truth is that the world needs your kind of intelligence now more than it has ever needed it before. As technology accelerates and as artificial intelligence takes over more and more routine tasks, the abilities that will matter most in the years ahead are precisely the abilities that you possess in abundance. Empathy, adaptability, emotional intelligence, the ability to understand context, the ability to read between the lines, the ability to make judgment calls that balance data with humanity. These are the skills that machines cannot replicate. These are the skills that younger workers are still developing. And these are the skills that you have been building and refining for your entire life. So tonight, as this quiet evening stretches out around you, I want you to sit with a different feeling than the one you are used to. Instead of the familiar weight of responsibility, I want you to feel the warmth of recognition. Instead of the tired question of whether it was all worth it, I want you to feel the calm certainty that it was. Every moment of waiting, every crowded classroom, every economic crash, every technological upheaval, every difficult conversation, every thankless act of mediation, every silent sacrifice. All of it was building something magnificent inside you. All of it was contributing to a brain that is operating right now at the peak of its power and wisdom. You are not past your prime. You are entering it. The first half of your life was the training. The second half is where you get to use everything you have learned. Not just for other people. For yourself. You have spent decades perfecting the art of taking care of everyone else. You have become a master at reading what other people need. Now it is time to turn that extraordinary brain inward. It is time to ask yourself what you need. It is time to pursue the things that make your heart feel light. It is time to stop apologizing for taking up space. It is time to stop believing that your best years are behind you. The science does not support that belief. The science says your brain is a masterpiece of accumulated experience. The science says your emotional intelligence is at an all-time high. The science says your ability to make wise decisions is stronger now than it has ever been. Trust the science. And more importantly, trust yourself. You have survived every single bad day you have ever had. You have adapted to every single change that was thrown at you. You have found a way forward every single time the path seemed blocked. That track record is not luck. That is the result of a brain that was built for resilience. That is the result of a brain that was shaped by challenges that would have broken a lesser mind. You are tougher than you think. You are wiser than you know. You are more valuable than the world has bothered to tell you. And you deserve to hear that. Not as flattery. Not as comfort. As a statement of neurological fact. Your brain is a miracle. It was forged in the fires of analog patience and digital revolution. It carries the warmth of handwritten letters and the efficiency of modern technology. It holds the memory of rotary phones and the mastery of smartphones. It understands the value of waiting and the power of speed. It can read a room full of people and a screen full of data with equal fluency. There is no other brain like it on this planet. And there never will be again. So the next time you catch yourself wondering if you matter or if your contributions are noticed or if the world still has a place for someone like you, I want you to remember this. You are not a relic of a bygone era. You are the living bridge between two worlds. You are the keeper of a kind of intelligence that is becoming more precious with every passing day. You are the proof that hardship does not destroy the human spirit. It refines it. You are the evidence that patience is not passive. It is powerful. You are the demonstration that empathy is not weakness. It is the highest form of human strength. And you are the reminder to everyone around you that wisdom cannot be downloaded. It must be lived. Tonight let that knowledge settle into your bones. Let it warm the places inside you that have been cold for too long. Let it soften the voice in your head that has been telling you that you should have done more or been more or achieved more. You have done enough. You have been enough. You have always been enough. And the best part of your story is not the chapter that has already been written. It is the chapter you are about to write. The one where you finally use that magnificent brain of yours to build a life that makes you happy. Not a life that impresses other people. Not a life that meets some external standard of success. A life that feels good from the inside. A life where you wake up in the morning and feel a quiet sense of pride in who you are. A life where the patience you were forced to learn becomes the peace you choose to keep. A life where the empathy you develop for others finally flows back to you. You have earned that life. Your brain is ready for it. The only thing left is for you to believe that you deserve it. And you do. You absolutely do. So take a deep breath tonight. Let the tension leave your shoulders. Let the worry leave your mind just for a moment. And as you drift towards sleep, carry this one truth with you. Your brain is not ordinary. Your brain is a once-in-history creation. It was built by decades of challenge and change and survival. It is the most sophisticated emotional and intellectual instrument you will ever encounter. And it has been waiting patiently for you to recognize its beauty. Just like it taught you to wait all those years ago. Good night. Tomorrow is another day. And it belongs to you.